All right, welcome to 2021 War Room Reports. We have a special guest in Turron Davenport from ESPN. This is a guy that I definitely respect in the industry. Once he introduces himself, I'm gonna, explain how we kind of met briefly. But Turron, how you doing?
Hey man, I'm doing really well, man. I'm glad you got me on here, CB. That's what I'm start calling you, CB.
Absolutely. I mean, that's my friends call me, so you're definitely welcome to call me that. I want to just kind of edify what I respect about you because this series is not only about showing my top 10 or my guys and just talking ball. It's about getting guys on this series that I truly respect. And one of the things that I do respect about your game is the ability to balance. Man, you're like the Swiss Army knife of draft evaluators. Then you do your reporting, and then you interview. All those things, I don't think people understand, takes immense amount of skill and confidence and courage. So I commend you for that.
I appreciate that, man.
Absolutely. You deserve it. One of the things I want you to do is just kind of introduce people, like tell them like your background, briefly, and then we'll get started with the talking ball.
Well, yeah, I've always loved football. It's something I played. I played in college. I was at Delaware State, so we're talking about an FCS school, and then transferred to Division II, Cheney University. So naturally, anytime we're talking prospects, I always give a shout out to my HBCU guys and guys from D2 schools. So that's something I did. After that, worked out for a few Canadian League teams, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Saskatchewan Rough Riders, did some Arena League workouts with the New York Dragons, the New Jersey Gladiators. None of it worked out. I wanted to just keep involved with football, man. You know how it is. You love the game, so you want to stay dialed in. And fortunately, I was able to kind of find my path through designing my own website called Press Coverage Sports and just work through a series of hurdles and obstacles. And that's why, when someone like you says, hey, man, like you do it all, or when other people say, it's crazy how hard you work, it isn't crazy because it's what I love to do, man. And that's really the bottom line. So it's always fun coming on and talking shop, man, and just being able to live this dream, man, of being involved in football.
Absolutely. I don't think people understand how hard it is, or maybe they do, to be able to, first of all, play the game and then stick around long enough and have the mindset to actually go after what you want. And
Yeah.
then once those obstacles come, what are you going to do to kind of get past those obstacles? A lot of people stop. You didn't stop, and the world is glad that you didn't stop. So definitely thank you for that. Um, with this series, I wanted to kind of make it uncut, unadulterated, just organic talking ball. Yes, it has elements of talk about player X, tell me about player Y, but based one of the things before that, I said we was gonna tell them how we met. Okay. Uh, us fellas, sometimes we get in, disputes or debates, and a lot of times, those things can get taken a certain type of way if you don't come from a certain cut of cloth.
Right.
Long story short, I had an opinion on some beat writers who and their talent evaluation talent. And I was talking specifically about a person we've since talked about it. But and then you came to the aid of the profession, and then I learned some things about it. But the main thing is we were able to have a healthy debate, and then here we are now. And I think that's very important because somebody is going to be watching this that might be on the social media platforms and may take things the wrong way and then miss a blessing, burn a bridge, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So, long story short, man, here we are. It's a blessing. Um, One of the reasons why I value what you say is you play the position, right? You played at a high level as well. I got to the college level, had some. I got to the high school level, all district, cornerback, talented running back, wide receiver. Got opportunities to play in college. My path took me somewhere else. But you got that level up in college, right? You played against guys that were going to go to the NFL or are good enough to. So that's why we got you on. You get to see the game from the wide receiver perspective, and then obviously you have to read the coverages, and you know a good corner when you see one. So
Yeah.
based on your experience of playing wide receiver, I'm sure in your younger days you might have played on the defensive side of things. Who in this draft class poses the most threat to you in terms of, if you was a wide receiver, who would be very difficult to beat in a one-on-one matchup?
That's a good question. I'm gonna go with J.C. Horn, man. And the thing with him is he's long. He has the footwork, and just the way that he can match up with a variety of players. So sometimes I know at the line of scrimmage, sometimes I will try to approach like with strength, a club and swim move. Sometimes, I'll approach with quickness, try to just redirect them. This guy is able to defend all of that. I mean, he's going against Kyle Pitts. He's going against Elijah Moore, the number one tight end, the number one slot receiver, and then going against Alabama, going against Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. That crew is like the number one receiver crew. So he would be the guy. But on top of all of that, he is a dog. You know what I mean? And he's someone that's going to bring it every time. And sometimes as a receiver or just as a football player in general, I mean, look, I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes you take a play off. You know what I mean? You can't do that against him because he'll embarrass you. Just ask Seth Williams what he did to him when Seth Williams tried to give him a little chatter and release. He grabbed him and threw him on the ground. Seth Williams isn't a little dude. You know what I mean? So you have to bring it each and every snap against J.C. Horn. So he would be the guy. Everybody talks Pat Surtain the second. He's a technician. I'll give him that. A lot of people talk Caleb Farley, but there's just something different about that dude, J.C. Horn.
Absolutely. He's my cornerback one.
Yeah.
For those exact reasons. I always gravitate towards the guys that I know that can hold their own one-on-one matchup. And you mentioned that dog mentality. That is something that is the X factor. A lot of players in this draft and in the league in general, they may have a certain skill set, but it can only go so far unless you have that mentality to want to be better, to take a guy that's 4 inches taller than you and throw him like a rag doll. That type of mentality, you got to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
So that was on the defensive side. So who would you rather have as your running mate? As a wide receiver, who would you rather have in this draft as your guy that I can depend on? That can go out there and get first downs, can stretch the field. Maybe outside of a guy that we probably mentioned. Who is a guy that you'd love to have on your team?
So you're talking like a sleeper, or you're talking somebody just in general? What do you?
Just in general, somebody that maybe we haven't talked about. So somebody maybe that's going to be day 2, day 3, that you really enjoy their tape, that you would love to have, as a teammate.
Yeah, I tell you, there's a couple, man, but Josh Palmer, Cornell Powell. I'm gonna go with Nico Collins though, because I was the type of receiver. I played X and Z, but I really made my bread and butter running digs and those in-breaking routes, running comebacks and curls and those type of things. So I want somebody who's going to take that safety out, and Nico Collins, 6'4", 215 now. At Michigan, where he was misused, he was about 230, but he was still getting loose down the field. So I want a guy that's going to stretch the field, and he does that. And he's someone that's going to occupy attention to that safety, and that's going to open things up for me underneath, running those digs and things like that. So I would say him. If you're talking just overall in general, man, Jalen Waddle would be a guy I would love to have as a partner. Just again, going back to that vertical aspect, because 17 just lines up. The secondary is backing up, and that's just making it better for me and giving me more room to operate. So I say those two guys, but man, that's the thing about this receiver group. There are so many. I didn't even mention Elijah Moore, but we're talking about day 2, day 3 guys, so I'm gonna go with them.
Absolutely. That's one thing about this draft that is astronomical. Like, I'm pretty sure you read my 2021 game plan. I feel like the Titans should double dip, even triple dip.
Absolutely.
At the wide receiver position. And
absolutely.
And the thing about that is people think about that. You can get different types of receivers when you have that type of flexibility. Like you can get your zone beaters, you can get your tall, big physical guy, you can get your speed guy. You don't want all of one type of player. Um,
Yeah.
are there any overlooked or less publicized guys in general in this draft? Non-position specific, just guys in all positions that you think are overlooked or less publicized. Who do you think are those guys?
Yeah, man. I mentioned Nico Collins, but let's switch positions up a little bit. Let's talk about Derek Barnes from Purdue. And he's someone. It's crazy to me. Like I was late to the party, admittedly. You know what I mean? He piqued my interest at the Senior Bowl, but then I just kind of shifted my focus to other positions. And then getting back to the linebacker position, I'm watching this dude. And I'm like, man, this guy's like Patrick Willis. Like, he's literally trying to kill everything. And I love that. I love guys who are able to diagnose and read really quickly and shoot that gap and just blow stuff up. And that's what he does. I got to interview him last week, and it's interesting because I asked him why it is he's always the first to the football. And I obviously it's film study. So, I got into that. And he told me when he first got to Purdue, he didn't know how to watch film. And it's just crazy that in those years, he's progressed to someone who is a student, a master of it. And that's the reason why he's always there. He said Luke Kuechly is someone that he always loved to watch, and he loved his ability to diagnose. But what's crazy about him is before he played inside linebacker, he was an outside linebacker. And he had I think it was like 7 sacks or something like that, coming off the edge. I told him, you remind me of Elvis Dumervil with the way you're able to get that leverage and get up underneath them. So he's someone that no one is talking about. I know Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, absolutely loves the kid. He's someone, it's just crazy because so much attention, rightfully so. Jamin Davis, Owusu Koromoa, and these guys, Jabril Cox is another one that's kind of floating under the radar. But I mean, no one is talking. Nick Bolton, no one's talking about Derek Barnes, and he's a top 100 player for me. And I think he's going to be a really outstanding one. So that's one. Let's talk MTSU, man. Robert Jones. It's interesting that he's not getting convo because, he obviously dominated at MTSU, but then he went to the Senior Bowl. There were reps, man, where I was like, this dude really is like, he's moving that line of scrimmage. You always talk about an interior guy on the defense reestablishing. No, he as an offensive guard was reestablished. He was reestablishing that line of scrimmage. So he's someone else. I remember the rep against Shaka Toney. Toney from Penn State, tried to come at him with just like a step and start to spin. He grabbed that and just, man, get on the ground, and that was one of the best reps. So he's someone else. He gives you flexibility. I mean, the guy has played center. He could play left or right tackle. I think he's best suited at guard, but he's one of them too. So those are a couple non-receiver, non-corners that I think definitely need some pub.
Absolutely. Those are guys that I think are flying on the radar as well. I remember those cut-ups. I wasn't able to go to the Senior Bowl, but I was able to get that tape of that practice. And he was a guy that definitely stood out. I remember, being around him when I was in the recruiting office, and he's a lot bigger than even what you think, close up. So he's a guy that definitely has those powerful hands. And then Derek Barnes is a guy that when you look at him as an inside interior player, obviously he can diagnose and make those tackles. But like you said, as an edge guy, a lot of people are like literally like he's a legit pass rusher. So
yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned those two. So I'm glad you mentioned the interview process because I definitely wanted to know who are some guys that you interviewed that kind of impressed you, whether it be their intellect, their knowledge of the game that kind of stood out or surprised you.
Yeah, there's a few, man. Jonathan Cooper from Ohio State. We were talking. I always like to give guys an example of a player that they remind me of. And I was telling Jonathan Cooper how I remember when I was covering the Eagles talking to Lane Johnson, and he always said that he hated going against Stephen Means because he had a heavy hat, like a heavy head. And it was always like trouble blocking him. And I said, man, you got a heavy head like Stephen Means. And he knew who Stephen Means was. I was like, okay, you're really a student of the game because not too many people know who Stephen Means is out of Buffalo, who played for the Eagles or Ravens, Eagles, and then he's now with Atlanta. So that impressed me. Dalen Hayes was really impressive out of Notre Dame, not just from a football side of things, but just from an impact side of things. He talked about how important it was. Sorry about that, my neighbor's dog. He talked about how important it was to, have an impact outside of the field, right? And be a guy for younger Black men to look at and say, okay, you know what? He did it. I could do it. I was really impressed there. Brevin Jordan, man, you talk about energy. That guy had all of it, man. And it was funny because it was kind of like I was behind a board just pushing buttons, to make him just explode with content. And it worked perfectly. I really enjoyed talking to him. Just talking about going against linebackers one-on-one, going against safeties one-on-one. He was like, man, I go against a linebacker 10 times. I'm going to win 9.7 times. And that 0.3 is because I fell. And I just love that competitiveness and just him talking about the how little measurables are and how important football is, and I'm very big on that. I don't use spider charts and all that stuff. Can you play football? And that's what's most important to me. So he was another one. Nico Collins, he was really refreshing, man. And I told him that he was my number 2X receiver. And it was like, I told him he wanted $1 million, man. Like the guy was so happy. And just throughout the whole interview, talking about watching Devontae Adams and how he was using the crossover release at the Senior Bowl and how effective it was and how he never used it before, just how happy he was to be down to 215 and just ready to go. And then just talking about the Titans too. He's someone that really enjoyed talking to Coach Rob Moore. So I thought that was interesting. Azeez Ojulari, I mean, there were a lot, man. Ojulari was fun too. That's my number one edge. So it was really good talking to him about that cross chop, the Yannick Ngakoue comparison. And then we got into just size not being a skill. Because, he's not the biggest guy. And, I mean, you've been on a football field. You understand that it's not all about how big you are. It's what you got here. You know what I mean? And he uses that. And I had him cracking up because I used the Bud Dupree term about folding offensive linemen when they're pulling. And he was like, yo, that's exactly what he likes to do. So that's like 4 guys, but there's a bunch, man. Every interview was a lot of fun, honestly.
Right. You're wrong for pushing Brevin's buttons like that, man.
Hey, had to do it, man. We need good content.
Right. That's the second time actually with Nico Collins. I had Justin Mello on.
Okay.
And he interviewed him too. And he was like, it was his favorite interview, him and Frank Darby. Like their personality. Yeah. Their personality just shows. I was going to go into the team building aspect, but that kind of piqued my interest. We'll do that after as we go to the home stretch of this interview. But there's about 4 players on each side of the ball, wide receiver and cornerback, that I want you to kind of briefly just go over. We'll start with wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sage Surratt. What do you think of those 2 players on the offensive side of the ball? Because I'm asking because those 2 players are kind of enigmas in my process. I just don't know what to make of them. So I'm going to go to the wide receiver, what I consider a guru, because you play the position, have a high level observation skills on the subject. What do you think about St. Brown and Surratt?
Yeah, Surratt, I'll start with him. He's really interesting. I love the way he's able to high point the football, and he plays what we call above the rim, the term. And it's really interesting because he's not the fastest guy, you know what I mean? But he's pretty crafty with his routes. I enjoyed watching him one-on-one at the Senior Bowl, and he actually made a catch down there that was probably the best catch, where it was a jumping one-hander. He caught it with his left hand and pulled it in. And I know that impressed everybody because you got that collective, whoo, So I think he's going to be a day 3 player, but he's one of those guys that I could see, actually, him and St. Brown, honestly, I would put them and use them as power slots, kind of along the lines of how the Saints used to use Marcus Colston, right? Where you just have that guy. And there's a lot of guys that I would do that with, but those 2 in particular, St. Brown, he's interesting. I like his strength, man. He plays with a lot of power to me. So that's always something that I like because that's what I tried to do, even though I wasn't the biggest receiver. So I always respect that. You know what I mean? And he's someone that I think will be really good working just the middle of the field. those digs and crossers and those type of things, and just consistently moving the chains. He definitely is an option there. But I'll influx just another big receiver that no one's talking about real quick, if I may, Tamarian Terry out of Florida State. And it's really interesting to me. This guy's 6'5", 230, double moves all day. I'm confused why he's not getting the conversation. And he's someone that I would put at Z or slot. I wouldn't put him at X as much, just because he has to refine his releases. You could get. I talked to Asante Samuel Jr. about it. Just getting up in his chest and going against him. So I really think he has to be considered among these bigger guys. He's actually bigger than St. Brown and Surratt.
Right. That's about what I got from them. Tamar and Terry was super high on my list. The only thing is, though, the injury, you don't know about that, but strictly off the tape, one of the more talented wide receivers in this class. The two guys, or I'll say three since you added Terry. Three guys on defense, all defensive backs. Greg Newsome, Tay Gowan, and who was going to say it? Marco Wilson. So those three guys, they're kind of like Newsome. I already know he has first round talent. Needs some refinement with man. I think he has all the traits needed. He just needs a little bit of refinement as man, but as a zone, one of the best zone corners in the draft for sure. Gowan, I'm gonna be honest, I don't see it. I don't see it. Marco Wilson, he's a guy that measures great. Obviously had a mishap in game at Florida, but other than that, I think he's a high trait guy. What do you think about those three players?
Yeah, well, I'll start with Gowan. Every time you watch UCF, you're not really watching for him, right? You're watching for Robinson. You know what I mean? But the thing I do like about him is he has length, and that gives me confidence to put him on the outside. He's patient, so you're not going to beat him at the line quickly and be able to get deep on him. And even if that happens, you have that 6'2", 185, like that size is really good. And all he has to do is put his arms up, and that's going to make it harder for the quarterback to drop the ball over his shoulder, into that outside pocket along the sideline. That's something. But the one thing, does he have the long speed? That's something that I wonder about him. I mean, I would take a chance on him just on his ability at the line and as well as his height. I would take a chance on him day 3 for sure. Marco Wilson is really interesting. Nobody really, he's kind of floating under the radar too. And I like him. In fact, he's a guy that I would bump inside and let him play some nickel as well. The Gator guys, man, like I don't like evaluate by school, but the thing that I always like about, guys that come from the SEC, especially that Florida program, they love to compete, and that's just give me that as a corner. Just have that willingness to compete first and foremost. And I think once you have that, we could work with everything else.
I agree. I was going to actually say, if you like Sean Wade, you should probably like Marco Wilson too, because I feel like you can bump them. They're better inside, in my opinion. So thank you for that. Now, team building is somewhat of a lost art, or not really used much. People don't have much, and that's fine, because I put myself in a different mindset when I evaluate, but people don't really have that team building mindset. They kind of are distant or laissez-faire about the picks that they make. Yes, they do the work. They watch the tape. They project players to certain teams, but they kind of wash their hands with the projection past this year. So let's put you in the seat of Titans general manager. What would be your strategy this year for the Titans? Would it be just best player available? I'm going to execute my needs, or do you have a bigger picture plan in terms of your 7-round draft philosophy or game plan this year? Well, how would you attack this draft if you were Titans general manager?
I would attack this draft first and foremost, after this debacle with Isaiah Wilson via the draft, and then just the swing and a miss with Vic Beasley. Look, I'm using all 5 of my virtuals first and foremost. And I really need to get that feeling. You know how I talked about Reverend Jordan, Nico Collins? I need to get that feeling when we talk. I need to feel your love and your energy for football through the screen when we talk, because I'm not trying to have a situation where I have a guy come in and love the life more than the game. And I think that's really what happened with Wilson. Human behavior is unpredictable, but at the same time, you could get a better gauge. And I've always found in guys that I've talked to, and it's funny because at the combine, I didn't get a good feeling talking to Isaiah Wilson. I didn't get a good feeling, you know, but I've always found that guys that I get good vibes from, guys who I could feel the energy from, they tend to be good players. But then on top of that, it goes beyond their skill, because now you got a guy. I mean, look at that locker room. You know, these are all, and they say it all the time. Derrick Henry says it. Kevin Byers says it. A.J. Brown says it. Ryan Tannehill says it. We feed off of each other. So I want somebody going in there that's pushing positive energy and pushing just love for the game and passion, you know, and that's something that's really important. So that's an under the radar thing that a lot of people, when they're just dropping names, they don't really look at that. I like the way you call it team building, because that's really what it is. You're fitting pieces in the right place. So that's what I'm looking for first. But then also, you know, I want players who were productive in school, right? And if there wasn't enough production, I need to have a valid reason why, a la Nico Collins. This might be the Nico Collins show because I mentioned about 5 times. But, I mean, there's a reason why. You know, Michigan was Michigan. We'll just leave it at that. I don't want to talk bad about a school, you know. So there are times where you could overlook it. But for me, you know, it's passion, production. And I want to see how you are in adverse situations. Because let's face it, football, you're always, every game, you're going to have, every series, you're going to have something happen. You know, how does that corner respond when he gets beat deep for a 70-yard touchdown? Does he remember that? Or does he come back the next play and is all up in the receiver's chops? How does that receiver respond to dropping the ball? Does it roll into more, or does he turn around? Terrace Marshall is a really good example, right? Very talented player, really, really good. One of the best across the board, X, Z, and slot. But what I noticed with him, you got to get him involved early. Because if you don't, you're not going to get the same. Look at the Missouri game. They got him involved early and throughout the game, and the dude blew it up until Josh Bledsoe, one of my safeties that I really like, knocked it out. So those are things that I look at, man. Adversity, how you are, you know, off the field, like personality and passion, and then your productivity.
That's interesting you talk about Terrace Marshall, because he's a guy that, you know, there's reports coming out about his injury history or whatever. And then, you know, he had like 9+ drops last year as well. And you know, I mark it as concentration drops, but you just added great context there. You know, one of the reasons possibly, you know, some drops are drops, concentration drops, but get them involved early and the guy might not, you know, 2 or 3 of those drops might not occur. So that's the context that I definitely was looking for there. And then your productivity, the passion, you know, you could almost make a 3 P's list there. But I like that because that makes a ton of sense. Now, hopefully the viewers find value in that. Now, as we close, we're going to close with a couple more things. Every guest that's been on that's, you know, evaluating talent, they kind of left us with the tricks of the trade for certain positions. You know, for me with running backs, it was always guys that could, you know, naturally break tackles, always falling forward. That's something that I saw with Derrick Henry. Whether it be because of how tall he is, he was always, you know, falling forward. You find hidden yardage that way. Whether it be with cornerbacks, always for me, it's that, to me, wide receiver cornerback is about your confidence. You know, if you are physically there, it's about your mindset, and that's really a key for me. So, what are some of your tricks of the trade? You know, we're going to open it up to all positions that you find. Usually, when this happens, he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, well, I'll start with quarterbacks, and it's interesting. I remember the whole Teddy Bridgewater versus Blake Bortles debate, and I just felt Teddy was a better player. But I will never forget that Florida game where that dude had his helmet, his head was holding on by that much. He almost had his head knocked off. He proceeded to get up and pick that Florida defense apart. That, to me, is an example of, to use the phrase, having that dog, and he had it. And it's unfortunate the injuries happened, because we know before he got hurt, he had Minnesota doing some things. They came very close to beating Seattle, and Seattle was a top team in the playoffs. So that's something I look at. I always look at, how are you in the pocket? If that thing is getting muddy, if it's getting dirty, are you flinching when you see another color jersey, or are you standing up strong and moving within the pocket? You don't have to get out and go. I just want to see you slide a little bit, or step a little bit and slide to one side and deliver a strike. Those are things I look for in quarterbacks. Running backs, I was at long speed. I need that. I need you to be able to hit another gear once you get to the second level of the defense. And you mentioned Derrick Henry. Once that John Deere tractor gets going, it's not getting caught. So that's something. Receiver-wise, and this is something with A.J. Brown. He was my number one receiver in 2019. I always loved the way he accelerated through the catch. Now, what does that mean? What it means is he's confident enough in his hands to where the quarterback will throw it to a spot, and he'll get there, and he doesn't have to slow down to make the catch. You know who did that all the time? Michael Irvin. You always see him catching the ball like that. That's why he wasn't a great yak receiver. But you look at your Jerry Rices, you look at T.O., you look at A.J. Brown, he's speeding up to make the catch. And he always plucks it, boom, and tucks it, and he's gone. And that's something that is critical to being a yards after the catch receiver. So I love that about A.J. Brown. I always look at that, just how comfortably they catch the football. I love that about Rashad Bateman. You don't see that ball hitting the 0. You don't see it hitting between the 1 and the 3. It's always right there. You know what I mean? And so he's someone that I really like as a receiver because of that confidence in his catching ability. Cornerbacks, I need ball skills, man. I need you to – now, ultimately, I want you to be able to go up and intercept the ball, turn it over, but I need you to have your jump timed well enough to where at the very least you're knocking it down. And Adoree Jackson, all the athletic ability in the world, but the guy could never get his jumps timed right. And that's why you saw times where, they're alley-ooping him and it's effective. You know what I mean? And there are times where he should have made the interception and he didn't. So ball skills to me are important. We'll just keep running through a couple positions. Linebacker, I talked about Derek Barnes. I need you to have that built-in GPS for the football. You just need to know where it's going to be at all times. And that's something that he has. And even, Kevin Byard has that. I told him, I was like, yo, man, you got a GPS built in for the ball. And he laughed about it, but he understood what I was saying. And I need that, right? And I need it in the secondary as well for safeties. But I'll finish it off with pass rushers. For me, pass rushers is very important. I need you to be able to, when the game is on the line, when the team is starving for a play, you got to make it. You got to look at that as a time that I'm that dude, I'm going to make the play. Azeez Ojulari, watch the bowl game against Cincinnati, especially towards the end. They needed a play, sack strip, and, he set it up. So that's what I need in all of those positions. I mean, we could go on, but there's just like tight ends. I need you to be willing to block. You know what I mean? I need you to want to block. I need you to take pleasure in doing that. Tommy Tremble, he's out there pulverizing cats, man. So there's a lot of traits that we look for in each position, man. And it's just, I know I'm rambling, but I get excited talking about this, and it's a great thing to talk about.
Absolutely. That's why I did it. That's why I wanted people to be open. I don't want you to feel like you're talking too much. The true people, the true nerds, if you want to call it, enthusiasts, they're gonna love this. They're gonna love this. They're gonna eat it up. And it's funny you talk about Ojulari, because I'm thinking when you say that, you paint a vivid picture. I'm thinking when I'm watching tape and when I look down and I see it's third down, what is this edge rusher gonna do? And it's like a switch is flipped. So and then you talk about A.J. Brown, a guy that early in the process, I thought he was a first round wide receiver. And
Absolutely.
And you know me, I try to keep inventory of those things over the past drafts. And one thing that I did not do as good as probably yourself is take into account the 2018 tape. His 2019 tape wasn't as good as 18. 18, you saw more glimpses of AJ Brown with the Titans.
Playing on the outside.
Absolutely. I mean, it's freakish. I slap myself right now because of that, because I didn't watch it enough. And that's something that I definitely learned. And then you talk about running through the catch as well. That's something that, I'm going to add to my inventory as well, because I see it with Elijah Moore. Like I see that constantly.
Everything is smooth. It's just back.
No wasted motion. And then I think ultimately when you talk about all of this, I think a term that I've become more privy to right now is just emotional maturity of all players. Like when you talk about the psyche, how emotionally mature are these players? And I think that in general will help how teams have more success off the field with prospects. All these terms that you use with guys that you like, they seem secure with themselves. They're emotionally mature. And then anybody that's not emotionally mature, you got to do with them as you may. So as we close, thanks for your time. I'm probably going to say that probably 1,000 times before we close. But what's next? Do you have any projects coming on? Tell the people where to find you, and just let them know the spiel.
Yeah, well, just to get one more, Azeez Ojulari mentioned, we did on ESPN. We had a group of us. They had, I think, 7 or 8 of us: Mel Kiper, McShay, Matt Bowen, and a few others. Myself. We had to pick the best comp that we had for a player, and I went Ojulari and Yannick Ngakoue, and we're talking about basically the same type of players. We're talking about 2 guys that are very ferocious against the run. They set the edge aggressively. At times they'll pinch it too. You know what I mean? In addition to cut that cutback lane away for the running back, and then the cross chop. So that was something I was really happy with. That I was able to get that comp in there. But as far as stuff that we have going, man, we did the last interview for Talking with TD as far as the draft series is concerned. I had Dayo Odengbo, Derek Barnes, and I had another guy. I didn't get to see your DT rankings, your nose tackle rankings specifically, but if you get a chance, and I know you watched Charleston because I know you like Michael Strachan, but watch the DT, Kenny Randall, very exciting player. Yeah, he was actually up for the Cliff Harris Award as a nose tackle. So he was beasting it. You know what I mean? Because nose tackles, they don't normally get that pub. But check him out. He was on the interview that I had. But the Talking with TD series will continue. You'll see that on iTunes and Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you check those out. What else do we have going? We have just continuing Titans work. ESPN.com. You check the Titans team page. You get all the updates there. We have actually. I'm going to invite you on Thursday if you're able to come through at Third and Home at the Nashville Sound Stadium. We're going to have some coverage there. Myself, Chris Sanders, Jarrett Stillman, and Mark Howard will have the draft coverage there. You'll probably be in your lab. I get it. Your whiteboard's all over and you got to look at your charts, but I still am going to extend the invitation. We'll be there Friday too. So that's pretty much what we have coming up, man. NFL Nation mock draft. That's coming up on Tuesday at 8:30 or 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern PM. So check that out too.
All right. Well, and I probably will be in the lab, but I might take up one of those invitations. We'll see. Got a house, a big family, so we'll see what goes down.
I get it.
But so did you say where to follow you at already?
Oh, no, yeah. On Twitter at @T_Davenport_NFL. I honestly don't know what my IG is, but you just type in Turron Davenport, TURRON Davenport, it'll pop up. I think it's Turron Davenport NFL, but I'm not sure what it is.
I got you. Yeah. I mean, it's a unique name. I mean, you can't miss it. So
yeah,
put it in the search bar. So, thank you for your time. Appreciate your expertise. We got to do this more for sure. Thanks. I'm sure this is going to get, a lot of views just from the fact that not because of who it is And a lot of people do that, try to find names, attach themselves to machines, big machines. I truly did it for the expertise, and I'm pretty sure people are going to be more smarter for watching this. You know, they're going to come out with this smarter evaluator. So thank you.
Yeah.
That being said,
Thank
I will
you.
see you guys on the next one, and TD, take care.
You too. CB.
Yes, sir.